I'd like to welcome you all to the 2025 Montgomery County Employees Black History Month program. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. This year's theme is African Americans and labor, a timely theme for a very important year, an important month. It's a theme that reminds us not only what was built, but how it was built. And it's a reminder that anything is possible when we build. We have a great program for you, a very great program for you. I'm very excited for you to see this. So many departments around the county help put this program together and make it all possible. So you'll see them soon. A special acknowledgement goes out to the Black History Month Planning Committee. Yeah. Yes, put in a lot of work, a lot of time. So thank you so much. Thank you. Everyone contributed greatly. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome this great man, the fourth director of the Office of Human Rights, and knowingly and unknowingly a mentor to so many of us, and today's moderator, the Honorable Jim Stowe. Make some noise.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Frederick, and for the work that you do. We are so appreciative of the role you play as our liaison to the African American Advisory Group. So thank you so much. It is indeed a very special day in observance of Black History Month. And so we'll begin this day with the presentation of the colors. It is done by the Honor Guard of the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. These folks are colleagues and co-workers of ours, Sergeant Tabbs, Corporal Francis, Corporal Piles, Corporal Carter, and they are led by Commander Lieutenant Linda Mahogany. The presentation of our colors, please stand. Wherever you are, please stand and acknowledge the colors.
Harry, cut. Forward. Halt. March. Hunter. March. Reset. Halt.
And ladies and gentlemen, now to sing the national anthem is Officer Johnson, Officer James Johnson, a 38-year veteran of the Department of Police for Montgomery County. Officer Johnson.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order. Huddle.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we have our honor guard stand in salute, we want to also salute one of our fallen members of this fine group of folks, Lieutenant Robert Andrews. He was one of the co-captains of this group. We recently lost him after having retired from our Department of Correction Rehabilitation in 2024. And please allow me to take this personal privilege to help you and I salute him by moments of silence. Thank you. We will now retire the colors.
Right. Right. Forward. March.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can, please remain standing as we now bring up Officer P.J. Gregory. And by the way, today is his 30th anniversary of being with the Montgomery County Police Department. We want to salute him as well as he comes forth and sings, as plays rather. It will sound like he's singing. Lift every voice and sing. Officer P.J. Gregory. You may be seated. Thank you. Did you all not hear P.J. Gregory sing through his saxophone? Let's give him a round of applause. Officer Gregory is the senior coordinator for the Explorer program. For the cadet program, and he is the coordinator of the Explorer program. I may have got those turned around a little bit. Is that right? Okay, very good. Outstanding. We are so appreciative again of all of our employees as they share their talents on this very, very special day. I'm next to introduce my colleague. I'm trying to see whether or not she is here. And I do not see her. So we will move forward with.
I'm here.
Oh, there she is. Magic, my colleagues. Very, very good. We're delighted to have her join us. She is in the person of Miss Tiffany Ward. She serves as the Chief Equity Officer here in the county. And in that role, she's charged with training county staff on the core tenets of racial equity and examining county policies and practices for their short and long-term effects on racial disparities. Without further delay, my colleague, she again is my co-moderator as well today, Tiffany Ward, our Chief Equity Officer in Montgomery County. Tiffany.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you to everyone who's gone before me. I'm just really delighted today to be here for another Black History Month celebration. We don't take this for granted. We are in a county that supports and is committed to racial equity and the work that it does and the value that it has in Montgomery County. It is my pleasure to welcome and to introduce County Executive Mark Elridge. I've had the pleasure of working with Councilmember Mark Elridge and now County Executive Mark Elridge for almost 20 years. Mark has been a civil servant or a public servant almost his whole lifetime, his whole adult lifetime. Mark, we welcome your remarks. County Executive, we look forward to hearing your thoughts today on today's theme. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark Elridge, County Executive.
Tiffany, we do have, and very excited about that to have, coming to the stage, County Council President.
There we go. Hey, Kate Stewart.
Great. It's Kate Stewart. And so, Tiffany, can you introduce then our County Council President, Kate Stewart?
Yes, it's my pleasure to welcome Council President Kate Stewart. Kate, much like her predecessors, has been a public servant here in the county for many years. She came to the county council before from being the mayor in Tacoma Park. We are so proud to have Kate here to welcome us, to bring remarks from the county council, and to celebrate Black History Month here in Montgomery County. Welcome, Council President Kate Stewart.
Thank you, Tiffany, and I apologize. I was chairing a committee session this morning and didn't think I would be able to join you, and then the session ended early, and I realized this was happening in the building. So I was up in my office watching, and I'm like, wait a minute, that looks like a familiar room. So I'm glad to be here in person with all of you, and just want to send my thanks to everyone who organized this celebration today, and to say particularly at this time in our country, as there is a great deal of uncertainty and, quite frankly, attacks on members of our community, that here in Montgomery County, we come together. We will continue to come together to celebrate Black History Month, to lift up our diversity and our work to be an inclusive community. And we know a huge part of that throughout our history here in Montgomery County has been the Black and African American community. And being able to be here today to acknowledge that, to celebrate the contributions of the Black community to Montgomery County, and to also acknowledge our history. Because it is only by acknowledging and coming to terms with our history not just our country's history, but our history here in Montgomery County, that we truly will be able to come to reconciliation and to become an inclusive community. So I thank you all for being here today and recommit ourselves to our community and working on these values. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council President. Those remarks were really important and, again, drive home the commitment that Montgomery County has to racial equity, to diversity, to uncovering and to reconciling the history of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Montgomery County. I think we are ready to welcome our county executive, Mark Elrich. I see that familiar face. Again, Mark is a lifelong public servant and a true champion of racial equity. And we welcome remarks from the county executive at our Black History Month celebration today.
So thank you so much, Tiffany. And I've been here since before you spoke. I just couldn't get my microphone or anything else to work, but I was listening to you. And yes, I think it's been, let's see, it's at least 18 years, if not 19. I think we're going into year 19 of working together. And Tiffany's been a real gem, and I think occupies one of the most important spaces that we've created in the county. When I was on the council, we passed a requirement for her office, and we passed it at the end of the outgoing council's term then, because we wanted to make sure that the new executive coming in, whoever it was, would have to deal with this. And so we kind of set the stage for it by passing it before I got elected or who anybody would have gotten elected. So I'm very happy that we did that. I will say we are in extraordinarily difficult times, and we're continuing to monitor the changes coming out of the federal government. It is truly shocking, the utter disregard they have for the work the federal workers do, but the utter disregard also for the kind of programs that they're dismantling that are so fundamental to building a just and equal society. And, you know, I grew up in the 60s, 50s and 60s, actually. And I remember a time when, you know, the unanimous vote of the Senate, and I think it was the Senate and the House, supports the Voting Rights Act. And here you are 60 years later, and they've done everything they can do to dismantle the Voting Rights Act. It's a very different world to live in, and it's a very hard world to live in. And hopefully this version of the world will be short-lived. But we all have to deal with it now. One thing I've decided personally to do is I'm not using DEI as an expression. I'm just going to say diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I want people to hear the words. If you just say DEI, people don't necessarily know what you mean. And the people who know what we mean and don't want to hear it, I want to make sure they hear it, because it's important work and it's work we are committed to, as Tiffany said. So, as you know, for the reason we're here, February is Black History Month, but it started as Negro History Week as an initiative to bring national attention to the contribution of Black people throughout American history. This came as part of the work of Carter G. Woodson, Dr. Carter G. Woodson in 1926. He chose the month of February, not because it was the shortest month, as many believe, but because February was the birth month of two significant men who greatly impacted the Black population of America at that time. That was Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln always makes me a little, I have, conflicted views of Abraham, because he, on the one hand, carried through and freed the slaves. On the other hand, when he passed the Emancipation Proclamation, he offered the Southern states about 6 months to rejoin the Union, in which case they could retain slavery. And so, tragic as the war was, it was their insistence in going to war that actually ended slavery. That's a little, it's a little disconcerting. The popularity of the week and related activities expanded the observance from a week to a month in 1976. And I believe this is a significant observance, and I'm glad it's continued to be planned and executed by our county employees. This year's theme is African Americans in the labor movement, and it's timely. We witnessed the upheaval in the federal government around employment. We are reminded of the fight for workers' rights of the past, and then it was an issue of unsafe working conditions, long hours, and low wages. Today, it's an issue of retribution, political partisanship, scare tactics, intimidation, and complete disregard for the well-being of workers and civil servants. The fight for workers' rights within African American communities started in 1838 with the Caulkers Association, one of the first Black trade unions to bargain for higher pay at the shipyards in Baltimore. In 1866, the Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society was founded to fight discrimination against Black employees in ship caulking. In 1925, the most notable fight for Black workers and eventual union formation was the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, led by co-founder A. Philip Randolph. And A. Philip Randolph is a name that is well known in this country and well known in the Black community particularly. At its height, the union had 18,000 members. Black workers played a key role throughout the U.S. labor movement, forming unions as well as helping to secure improved pay, benefits, and working conditions as the fight for equality and racial justice continues. And we're going to continue to do this work. Another side note on the forming of unions. I mean, it's not lost on us that in the very early days of unions, the owners of factories would bring up Black workers from the South, not telling them that they were going to be strike breakers, but use them to break strikes at the factories. And that, it took work to mend the relationship between the unions and the Black community because of the way the folks have been used. But people realized, I think, pretty early that these people didn't come here knowing what they were doing. They came here because they were offered a good job, and that was something you couldn't get on a Southern farm. And it also led to a lot of the migration to northern cities. So unions played an important role, probably initially in the negative aspect because it provided the first job opportunities, but in the wrong way. But in the long term, unions have taken up the fight of civil rights, and it's been a real plus for all of us. So I want to welcome you all and thank you for participating in the county's Black History program. And I appreciate the planners and participate this year's program. This occasion reminds us to reflect on our national and local history and the difficult lessons learned from the fight of the civil rights movement, the nexus with the labor movement, and the contributions of Black workers to the labor movement. I've long had a committed relationship with labor movements and enjoy a positive connection with major unions. We may have to negotiate contract terms at times and conditions. We all agree that our workers are our greatest assets, and among them are our Black employees. And we are committed to recommitting ourselves to becoming a community and employer that constantly works for racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, and equal justice under law in the workplace. And I'm pleased to note that for 63 years, Montgomery County has had one of its core values and mandates, equal rights and equal justice for all our workers and residents. We salute the efforts of the Office of Human Relations, EEO, and the Office of Labor Relations for their efforts, and Montgomery County Human Rights as they implement the various aspects of labor relations and ensure that civil rights employment laws are carried out with this mandate. And I also want to recognize the labor unions in Montgomery County who have been in the forefront of seeing to it that workers get their fair place at the table, and that means all workers to the unions in this county. And that's really important, and you don't always see that everywhere. And equally pleased with the progress of our Racial Equity and Social Justice Initiative. We extended our appreciation for the efforts of Racial Equity and Social Justice Commission and the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice staff, led by Tiffany Ward. And we stand in solidarity with all the giants of labor movement, of which we will hear more about today. We are thankful for the commitment and contributions of all who dedicated their lives to creating a workplace that works for everyone. And what that means for everyone is the opportunity to have a decent and fulfilling life with decent wages, life-sustaining wages, rent-paying, food-paying wages that make it possible for people to achieve and experience the blessings of liberty. There's no benefit to liberty if it doesn't extend to you. And for a long part of American history, that sadly was the case. Montgomery County is doing it right. And I want to thank all of you for doing this today and doing this every year.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I think in these really, I would say, stressful and hard times, it's really important. Yeah, it's really important that folks like myself who do this work and in my office and Office of Human Rights and EEO hear that and know that from their county leadership. So I thank you, and I thank County Council President Kate Stewart for your support and your continued commitment to racial equity and social justice. I'd now like to give the mic over to Director James Stowe to continue our program.
Kate Stewart, thank you so much, President of County Council, and then to our County Executive, Mark Elridge. We thank you so very, very much. We are now getting ready to move to our next segment on our program, and it deals with now understanding about the labor movement and the African American community. And so please, in fact, now engage in our short video, and then we'll get into the real heart of our program.
African Americans have long been at the forefront of labor movements, leading the fight for fair working conditions, better wages, and dignity in the workplace. From slavery to today, Black labor has shaped America's economy while inspiring generations to stand for justice in the workplace. Let's begin with history. The American economy was built on the backs of enslaved Africans who provided free labor for industries like agriculture and infrastructure. Even after emancipation, African Americans faced discrimination, often excluded from mainstream labor unions, yet they organized and found ways to fight for equality. The Colored National Labor Union, established in 1869, was a groundbreaking step. It organized Black workers at a national level, focusing on fair wages and rights at a time when mainstream unions refused them membership. Later, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, founded in 1925 by A. Philip Randolph, became the first nationally recognized Black labor union. Its influence went beyond labor rights. It was pivotal in organizing the 1963 March on Washington. Black women have also played critical roles. In 1881, the Atlanta washerwomen's strike saw Black laundresses demand better pay and conditions, proving that collective action could bring change. Decades later, Dorothy Lee Bolden founded the National Domestic Workers Union in 1968, advocating for domestic workers' rights and inspiring the modern domestic labor movement. Labor movements were not just about economics, but also civil rights. The Memphis Sanitation Workers' Strike of 1968 is a prime example, where Black workers marched for fair wages and workplace safety, supported by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This historic movement underscored the deep connection between racial justice and labor rights. Today, Black workers continue this legacy. The National Domestic Workers Alliance and the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists champion equity in workplaces, ensuring that the fight for labor justice remains alive. Union membership among African Americans is growing, even as union participation declines in the broader workforce. The story of African Americans in labor is one of resilience, leadership, and progress. It reminds us that the fight for economic justice is inseparable from the fight for racial justice. As we honor the pioneers of labor movements, we recommit to building workplaces that reflect fairness and equity for all. Let us continue to carry the torch, inspired by the determination of those who came before us, to ensure that history does not just repeat itself, but progresses.
Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest speaker today is in the person of Dr. Robert Cosby. He's Assistant Dean of Administration, Associate Professor at Howard University School of Social Work. He's also the Director of the Multidisciplinary Gerontology Center there at Howard. In the role as Professor and Director of this great program, the very center of it, of course, is at Howard University. He has worked in health and human services for over 20 years. Dr. Cosby teaches on a variety of issues involving social justice and civil rights, welfare policy and healthcare policy, and race, class, and gender. His research interests include social isolation and older adults, health and aging disparities, and race across the lifespan, grandparents raising grandchildren, opioid use, disorders among older adults, gentrification, school and social isolation, and trauma in old adults. He holds a master's degree in social work and social sciences with a concentration in gerontology from Syracuse University, and a PhD in social science with a concentration in gerontology, social work, and social science from the Syracuse University Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Robert Cosby.
Greetings, everyone here and those who are online. Thank you very much, Mr. Stowe. Thank you to the county executive and to the council for all of your support and the work that you do. We are grateful that Black History Month has come to what it is, and we will continue to celebrate and be glad in that. Wanted to share with you a number of things and have a very limited amount of time, so I will get to it quickly. But I also wanted to say that Carter Woodson was the person that started Negro History Week some time ago. For those of you that don't know, he lived for much of his life in Washington, D.C. So it's not that far in sort of the DMV to sort of recognize how Black history has affected people. I will pick up from the video that was shared a little while ago about the way in which we have been able to look at the labor movement and how we've been able to look at Black workers, because workers of all backgrounds, regardless of race, class, or gender, we all want to be able to survive and thrive, and that doesn't always happen in many communities. And so I applaud Montgomery County for taking the time to recognize, but also to walk the walk and not just talk the talk as it relates to this. So the labor movement before the Civil War, you heard about 1835. The Black Caulkers went on strike, both in Baltimore and actually it started before going to Baltimore, I believe, at the Washington Navy Yard. For those of you that don't know, Southeast Washington, between the Southeast Southwest corridor. And caulkers, as many of you may know or may not know, ships were made of wood. And so they had to have a caulk or a tar that was put on by hand that was able to make the ships more buoyant and to keep out leaks. And so the people that did that work often were Black folk. Why? Very hard work. And were not paid well. That's a whole nother discussion, but we're going to get to part of that. So the agencies that really looked at these issues happened as a result, as the county executive mentioned, after the Civil War and as part of Reconstruction. And they involved a variety of things that I think were quite important in the formation of Bureau of Refugees, the Freedmen's Bureau, and abandoned lands, all opportunities. People talk about the 40 acres and a mule that were promised to Black folk. That was also about labor, for people to be able to work and to support themselves, but we're not able to do that because in large respect, the US government reneged on that agreement. So what did that lead to? From the Civil War and Reconstruction, we got many congressmen and senators who were Black. Yes, there were Black senators here in the United States. And they helped to develop things in a way that brought attention to the fact that workers, largely unpaid workers in the South, had an opportunity to make a wage to help to support themselves. And that's where we talk about labor. Does anyone know when the Department of Justice was founded? I will tell you. 1870, right after the end of the Civil War. 65 it ended. So 5 years later, they started that. Now, why is that important? It's important because the reason for the Department of Justice being founded was to protect freed Black men. Yes, I said it, to protect freed Black men. And so the Department of Justice, think about where we are now and think about where things were, you get a better feel for, yes, we are all about the information related to justice and equal opportunity and equal rights, but we also recognize that we still have had historically a lot of work to do and still are doing. So in 1876, there was a disputed election by Rutherford B. Hayes was the person who became the president, but it was only after a lot of backroom deals, and that's when we really started to see the Redeemer rule and the formation of Jim Crow. For those of you that know about Jim Crow, that's not the guy's name down the street. It referred to a policy in which there was active discrimination that took part against Black folk. We know by 1896, when we talk about Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court decision, which basically said that there can be separate but equal opportunity. And that's when really it was codified that Blacks were in fact second-class citizens according to the law. And so as we look at how we move forward, the U.S. Department created, I guess, as a result of some of the things, the Labor Department was formed in first of the 20th century in 1913. And between 1913 and 1948, there was mediation and a lot of reconciliation regarded to what was acceptable for folks. And Black folk came from the South. We talk about the Great Migration. We talk about coming north for jobs. And you heard about strike breakers, or scabs as folks were called. And those happened to be many Black folk that didn't know that they were walking into basically a hornet's nest of people who were striking for better wages. This is an important point. Next slide, please. Because what it says is basically that we are looking at these issues of how we work as a people, how we help our communities, Black communities, white communities, all communities. But we came up against this thing called racism. And when we did, it made it very difficult to be able to organize. And the unions were the first way, going back to the Civil War, the opportunity to be able to do that. Railroads, steel, as the 20th century came about, the automobile industry, shipbuilding, meat packing, all industries that were hard work, hard labor, but Black folk were the folks that were able to do that work. I bring your attention to Ben Fletcher, one of the first people who, with the IWW Marine Workers Association, Next slide, please. You will find that that many of the things that people did with unions was about getting people black and white to understand that you can work side by side. You can have a wage that is important. And by the time we looked at things that have come into the 20th century, and that's where I'll spend about 3 minutes talking to you about some of this and how that has worked. You had Marcus Garvey, who started looking at the Back to Africa movement. But you had also folks you mentioned, you heard A. Philip Randolph, started basically in the 1920s with his work all the way through to the 1960s. Very important person as we talk about that. What we call the National Labor Relations Act, or some people know of it as the Wagner Act of 1935. Very big in terms of helping unions to organize. But one thing that was really difficult wasn't just the organizing, it was the fact that they could talk to people about joining the union. They could deal with collective bargaining. You hear that term now, where you have the opportunity to help people to support black and white working men and working women. And so that was a big piece. Next slide, please. Anyone know who this is? This person is one of the best seamstresses of her day. She was a seamstress for Mary Todd Lincoln, the wife of President Lincoln. And she was the seamstress that was known in the day and who had a shop in Washington, D.C. For being able to do that work. Elizabeth Wellesley, she was a person who was able to do that. Next slide, please. We recognize that really when we talk about how we have developed as a country, we have to recognize that black workers have helped to make that possible. And so we talk about A. Philip Randolph, as I said, but you also have to talk about some of the other folks that made it possible. The Southern Tenant Farmers Union was very big in that. There were a lot of difficult times, and some of the people that really made a difference early on did that on the backs of blacks who put their necks out there literally and figuratively to try and make a difference. As we talk about the workers from 1920s on, you see this woman on your side that's in front of you. That is a young Miss Mary McLeod Bethune. And she was very big in terms of helping the labor movement, but also in terms of helping to educate people and to talk about fair wages for women, for girls in schools. And they had a school actually in Washington, D.C. that she was able to do, and a historical black college and university in Florida as well. She had what they called the first black cabinet, bringing together the best minds of the time that were black folk to be able to provide information and support direction for, at that time, President Roosevelt. The civil rights and labor movements that we know of, we really talk about that from the 1950s on, and 1955 with the death of Emmett Till. Really did help in showing people that this was a way forward for many people, but it was a I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore type moment as we talk about what occurred at that time. Next slide, please. This lady, Washington, D.C. native, Mary Terrell, was known for her work in helping women to be able to organize, helping women to be able to become more educated. And that is part of when we talk about the labor movement that is often overlooked. We don't see that. Next slide, please. So this is what we've come to when we think about the hard work that was done by men. And during the time of World War II, women did that work and did it very well. And so you saw the pictures of Rosie the Riveter. It wasn't always the white woman. It was a lot of black women that were doing that work as well. Next slide, please. This is a person who practiced what she preached, was the first person, I believe, to run for the position of President of the United States. And if you know about Shirley Chisholm, she was a person who did an awful lot to help communities and to bring attention to the issues associated with labor and with fair wages and working to try and do that. She was a congresswoman from New York State and New York City in particular. Next slide, please. So some of the people that have been able to help and work in these areas, I mentioned a couple of them. I didn't mention the people that worked with MLK, but I want to just sort of tell you that Ed Nixon was one person. Think about this for a second. People who lived in Montgomery, Alabama, by the way, at that time it was 80% black, yet they had no ability to be able to have any work as far as their representation. The mayor, the council, et cetera, all were white. And they were deciding largely about the lives of black folks. And so what they did was to basically say, whatever we have to do to walk, you heard about domestic workers, they would work and walk home, go to work, walking sometimes 2-3 miles at a time. And they developed carpooling, which was a big way in which they were able to do that. And they were able to do that quite well. And it broke the economic support system that Montgomery had set up because they were making a lot of money from black workers. And it was because of that, that union, I should say, that work, that there were a lot of folks that worked on that. The AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor, and the Congress of Industrial Organizations, they merged in 1955 to be the one organization that really has helped, and black folks got an opportunity to be able to join that particular union. But those were always viewed as skilled workers. A. Philip Randolph did something that no one else had done at that time, which was to bring black men, largely because those are the ones that worked on the railroads, that they created the middle class for a lot of the people that live here in metropolitan Washington now, black folks, because that was the first opportunity to get to middle class jobs because of the way in which they were able to work together, those 18,000 people that worked there. Bayard Rustin was an architect of the March on Washington for Freedom and Jobs in 1963. Think about this: no opportunity for a cell phone, no telephones that they could just call independently. They did that with their work from churches, from telephones that they called day and night, and they got over 100,000 people to be able to attend that march on the National Mall. And every year, or every 10 years, I should say, we celebrate that March on Washington for Freedom and Jobs, which was largely done with the help of A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin. Rustin, I think there was a movie that came out not last year, I believe, or a little around then, that brought attention to the fact that as a gay man, a gay black man, that they treated him poorly. But it was, in fact, his work that made it possible for that particular march to take place, and became a best practices for how many civil rights marches needed to be gathered and worked on from that point. I will say the last of the points that I think you should know about is, next slide, please. These are the folks at the time were considered the big six, as they called them. They were the movers and shakers for civil rights, but not just civil rights. They were the folks that made a difference related to labor, and for black people, they were names that almost all families knew. John Lewis, which we knew as a congressman, get into good trouble, he used to say. At that time was a young man in college. Next to him was Whitney Young, a person who was known for his work with the Urban League. Next to him is that guy I said that started in the 1920s with his work with unions, was A. Philip Randolph. And next to him, we know as Dr. Martin Luther King, which we don't really have to say very much, but I will bring to your attention the fact that he was not always a nonviolent pragmatist. He was more a pragmatist than a nonviolent person, but it was the work of some of the folks that were there, the gentleman to his right, that helped in influencing him, along with some other people you don't hear a lot about, that helped him to understand that that was a way to be able to move ahead. Next to him is James Farmer, and then next to him is Roy Wilkins. I suspect I'm getting the hook in just a second, but I wanted to at least let you know that one of the big pieces in having those 6 people to get there is that they had to work by telephone, they had to work in person, and they had to work under trying circumstances where often there were threats on their lives. And that work has made it possible for each of us to be able to build on the labor movement, to be able to build on our opportunities to work on civil rights, and to be able to be here for many of us in this room tonight or today, and as well for those who are online. The last point that I will make is that our history can be a teacher for how we look at our future. And the only way for us to be able to learn and to grow from that is to look at the lessons learned, and those that were not good lessons, to not repeat them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cosby, and he's going to join us, so stay where you are, sir, on a panel that we're about to have, and we're looking at this issue of labor in the African-American community in 3 ways. One is look at where we were in the past, and you've heard a little bit about that already, but also the present, and then we're going to examine the future. And so we've invited some of our colleagues to come up and share a perspective from those 3 periods that we believe are critically important. So as we, in fact, go forward, we'll be ready then to move into the piece with that discussion at this point. So we're going to invite then Dr. Cosby to stand up and come back to the panel, and also invite these other persons, George Lacey, and also Lisa Blackwell, Esquire. Come on up, folks. You've already met, again, Dr. Cosby, but let me tell you about the other 2 panelists. Please, folks, go ahead and just have a chair. The first person I want to share with you by way of bio is Lisa Blackwell Brown, Esquire. She is the treasurer of the UFCW Local 1994. Lisa's journey is nothing short of inspiring. With a robust academic background that includes a political science degree from the University of Dayton, a Juris Doctorate from Wagner University School of Law, and an LLM in Labor and Employment Law from Wayne State University. She has dedicated herself to the pursuit of both justice and advocacy. Her early work of legal aid in Baltimore, where she represented abused and neglected children, speaks volumes about her commitment to vulnerable populations. Ms. Blackwell Brown, her time in Quito, Ecuador, where she taught English to attorneys and became fluent in Spanish, showcased her versatility and willingness to embrace diverse experiences. Since 2013, she's been a vital part of UFCW, Local 1994, initially interning there over her summers before law school. Her roles have evolved over time, reflecting her leadership and dedication. Currently, as the Secretary-Treasurer and Field Representative for Public Safety, she serves with an unwavering dedication overseeing the Cumberland City Police and the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. Her previous role as recorder from December 2020 until her election as Secretary Treasurer in September of 2021 further highlights her commitment and capabilities. Lisa Blackwell is a testament to what dedication, empathy, and a relentless pursuit of justice looks like. Lisa Blackwell Brown. Our next panelist is George Lacey. Many of us know him very, very well. As a manager in the Office of Labor Relations for Montgomery County, he brings extensive experience in fostering positive labor relations. Previously, as a Director of Labor Relations for the Montgomery County Police Department, he handled complex labor issues with integrity and compassion. He also founded and led the World Media Broadcast Company and owned a radio station. George, radio station, all right. At WCLM 1450 AM in Richmond, Virginia, promoting, again, diverse voices. In his legal career, he served as law clerk for attorney Percy Julian at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, attorney for the National Labor Relations Board and the U.S. Department of Labor, counsel for the National Treasury Employment Union, and law professor at Antioch School of Law and University of the District of Columbia School of Law. He was also the chief labor negotiator at the University of District of Columbia, commissioner of the DC Consumer Claims Arbitration Board, a labor editor for the WGI publications, and also held numerous roles in labor law organizations. His admission to practice before the U.S. Supreme Court and multiple federal and state court highlights his legal acumen. Beyond his professional accomplishments, he is a dedicated member and board member of the historic Kappa House Foundation and an active member of Kappa Alpha Psi. His community service includes leadership roles with the Prince Hall Freeman's and Eastern Star charitable organizations of DC and the Perry School Community Service Center Incorporated. He earned his BA degree in business administration from Howard University, his JD from the University of Wisconsin School of Law, and his LLM in labor law from Georgetown University Law Center. His involvement in the National Bar Association and NAACP underscores his dedication to justice and equity. His career reflects a deep commitment to justice, community, and service, making significant contributions to labor relations, legal education, and community service. Our colleague, George Lacey. Now, to this panel, we'll ask some questions, and we're going to invite those of you who can also, and I'm asking my folks to, from a technical standpoint, help me if there are questions coming in from the audience who may be watching. And so the first question I'm going to ask to all of you is, just briefly, give us an understanding about your thoughts about African Americans and the labor movement. We'll start with Ms. Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right, awesome. Good morning. So my thoughts. The labor movement and the civil rights movement are so closely connected. You can't have one without the other, right? Because civil rights was about dignity, about respect, about a seat at the table, right, to speak to those issues. And the labor movement is about the same thing. Along with wages and working conditions, employees want respect in that space where they work. And so the civil rights movement, the labor movement built itself on the civil rights movement. So you can't talk about one without talking about the other. So I was so very happy that for this Black History Month for this year, Montgomery County saw the interconnectedness of the two and that we're discussing the two together because, again, you can't have one without the other.
George?
I guess my view is a little different. Can you hear me now? Okay. I guess my view might sound a little different, but I think first and foremost, accurate history is important. And I'm glad Jim talked about past, present, and future, because in many respects, where we are now is not unusual to me. And I'm talking about the entire tenure, because the history of being Black in America often meant you had to not only do battle in just generally, even when you went to pray, there was separate facilities and churches. But when you went to work, there were also separate facilities. And even under exclusivity, under separate but equal, many people forget that part of Title VII had to do with requiring unions to treat all their members equally. And so I'm very happy about where organized labor is now versus where it was. A. Philip Randolph had to battle the AFL. I mean, and the battles were royal. Many of you know about the sleeping car porters, but none of you know, I'm going to ask, how many people know about the National Alliance of Postal Employees? Doctors. So in 1913, the National Alliance was founded in Lookout Mountain, Tennessee. And the history to it, and there's a reason I'm going to tell you about it because I think it's important. The mail was always put in wooden boxcars and traveling across the country. And those boxcars were often set behind the engine for a reason, because they could quickly catch fire. And the folks, the clerks who handled that mail, for the most part, because of the danger, were African Americans. And then there was an invention, I guess the Elon Musk of that day decided, let's make the cars in steel. And so when you have steel box cars, the lack of fire is really a blessing. And so what you found during the 1900s, and I'm talking about very early, they were forcing Black folk out of those jobs and giving them to whites. And the union that was supposed to be representing them just wouldn't represent the African Americans. And so they got together and formed their own. And it was the National Alliance of Postal and Federal Employees. Just recently, the Department of Labor has raised their emblem in the Great Hall. If you ever go to the Department of Labor, there's a hall where the unions that are over 100 years old will have their emblem. And the Alliance is the only Black or African American union that has an emblem up. Now this year, the sleeping car porters will get theirs up. And I bring it up because when they founded in 1913, they grew. And A. Philip Randolph actually stayed at the Alliance headquarters when he was actually doing organizing. And so just knowing and understanding that history, people have to appreciate when you talk about Title VII, the AFL-CIO testified against Title VII. George Meany was on record testifying about Title VII. And for me, what makes it odd is that it was George Meany who gave my recommendation for law school. My mom happened to be nursing him, and he recommended, he said, if your son wants to go to law school, you ought to go to Wisconsin. We've got a labor institute up there. And so he gave me a recommendation and off I went. It turned out to be great. And afterwards, he tried to assist us in getting employment with the AFL. But I can tell you, it was often hard. And so today, the unions, and I'm very proud to say that the unions have stepped up to the plate. And they've really grown and done many great things. And so from my perspective, I think that we know how to fight. And so unions are ready for this battle. They're geared up. And I know it causes a lot of consternation, but the very nature of labor organizations is they have to fight. And so from my perspective as African Americans, understanding the history, knowing that nothing was given to you. What you had to fight for. And as you had to fight a number of white folk, you had a number of white folk who were also assisting you in that fight. And so that history, I think, is not told the way it often should be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. That was right on the money, as they say. I would echo both my colleagues, what they had to share, both Ms. Blackwell-Brown and Mr. Lacey, because as I sort of intimated when I was speaking, we stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before us. And we would not have had the opportunity to do many of the things that we do in our United States of America without those individuals having stepped up to be able to do that work. George Meany, the president of AFL-CIO, they worked primarily with individuals who really had a different approach to labor, and they cared more about those workers that they thought had skills, and the preference and the bias was white workers had more skills than black workers, whether that was true or not. So my belief is that we have come in some ways to a crossroads. Collective bargaining is a big part of the way in which we work with both government unions as well as on the private sector. But what appears to me to not be there is the same level of leadership that you can say who that entity is and know those names. And families need to understand, black people need to understand who those individuals are. And because of that, I think they will have a better understanding of who are our civil rights leaders, who are our labor leaders. And I think that will help us all as we get to understand that that old saying about if you are not at the table, you have to make sure that you're not part of the menu.
Lisa, pick up if you will. This is about the past and the present. So we've got a little bit of past just a minute ago. What's the situation today in the present or the present times? That suggests then that, well, let me back up a second. Where are we with labor in the current present time? Your perspective.
Currently, where are we with labor? I would say that we're in a good space, but I would say that we also always can be in a better space. And I say that to say because representation matters. And oftentimes in the labor movement, who we represent are not the people sitting at the table, right? And so that's something that us as a labor movement, we have to work on. For example, Local 1994 is a part of UFCW. We represent majority minority workers and women and African-American women, but you don't necessarily see African-American women sitting at the table, right? And so we as a labor movement have to work on that. I think we need to be held accountable for the words and the phrases that we use, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like words should just not be a placeholder, they should mean something, right? And so I think we have to, all labor unions, AFL-CIO, UFCW, AFSCME, we all have to work toward just practicing what we preach, right? And so I think we're in a good space because to Mr. Lacey's point, we will always fight. A labor leader loves a good fight. That's why we're here. That's why we do it. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job, but I think we need to do a better job of being more inclusive of everyone that we represent.
Let's stay here a second. Why are you doing this? What motivates you to get up every day and get it done? You've got a number of experiences and education and all those things. Why does Lisa Blackwell-Brown do this particular job and career in her lifetime?
I do this because one, I love to fight. Like I love a good argument, but I love to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, right? I was blessed enough in my life to be put in certain spaces to have a voice. And I have a wonderful president and President Gino Rend who has given me the opportunity to have a seat at the table, being an African-American woman. And so I have to not just do what I'm doing, but I got to pull up those who don't get or didn't have the benefit of being in the position that I'm in. And so it's very important to me. It's very vital to me that it's not just about me, it's about all of us. Because if my brother or my sister's not doing well, I'm not doing well. I believe in the connectedness of the world. I believe that we all uplift one another, and we'll all be better off if we just fight the good fight on behalf of one another. And so being a part of the GEO, being in the labor movement gives me the ability to do that.
As you look at this, again, to my colleague, George Lacey, what about you? Do you see then that the community embracing labor, is there ongoing controversy as far as labor is concerned? When people hear about a protest or a strike, generally, is that support for that kind of notion, or do people automatically react in a very negative way toward this whole movement? Your thoughts?
One of the problems that the unions have, and I'll be candid with you, one of the reasons why I came to work in Montgomery County is because of Lisa's union. I think that union, McGeo, is a model for the future. And I'll tell you why. If you take a look at how it is structured, it is one of the few unions in the country, and there's a legal reason for that, that workers of every classification are all covered by the same contract and the same union. And so there's a principle in labor that there must be a community of interest for a union to have recognition.
Cooperation that we are going to have some problems. So I think we have to talk about the future as something that we all look towards, not to say I don't have a future. I actually know of people that say that. So I think that those are the pieces that we need to bring together. Think of this as the quilt that needs to be interwoven. And if we're going to be able to succeed, we are going to have to do it together.
Let's thank our panel. Again, Lisa Blackwell-Brown, we got Dr. Robert Cosby, and we have also Mr. George Lacey. Let's give him a round of applause, folks. Even if you're at home somewhere, round of applause. Great, great discussion. We allow them to leave the stage at this point in time. We reset very quickly. There's also a documentary about the other person that, one of the other persons that was mentioned, I think both by Dr. Cosby and also in the video, and that is Bayard Rustin. That name is somebody that you really ought to become familiar with if you are not. He's from Chester, Pennsylvania. And he was the one, along with others, that went down and talked to Martin King about the issue of violence. And so as a result of that, then he came back, Ruskin having studied a little bit about Gandhi and had some idea about nonviolence. It was through that method and opportunity that we were able then to have Martin King understand that, again, violence was not going to happen. The story is told then that on the day that his house was bombed, a mob of folks supportive of him arrived with bats and guns and all kinds of things. In fact, Dr. King had a gun. But after this opportunity to hear about this nonviolent movement and how powerful it was, he then began to shift gears with his philosophical way of dealing with the world around him. So he is, again, someone, Bayard Rustin. Some of you again know about a gay man that really got put behind the door, as it were, the curtain, as it were, because of his sexuality. But was, as always been stated, the key architect. It would not have happened, the March on Washington, without Bayard Rustin. Would not have happened. He was a keen organizer, a beautiful tenor, could sing like a bird. And so it was very gifted man indeed. So I would just let you know that that may be yet another opportunity to learn about, again, this very important part of our history. All right. We talked about the past and we talked about the present, and we alluded a little bit to the future. Matter of fact, our director kind of pointed us in that direction, Director Gail Roper, about the future. What does the future hold in this issue of labor and the African-American community? And so we're pleased to have another set of panelists who will come up. And I'm going to ask them to come on up as you come. Will Jawando, our Council Vice President, he's here. Thank you so much, Vice President Jawando. Our Director, again, of Technology. Let me get together, Director. Technology and Enterprise Business Solution. We call it TEBS. That's why I don't know the full name. Director Gail Roper. And then Mitzi Herrera, Program Director of the Montgomery Connects at the Office of Broadband Programs, also with TEBS. Let me do a quick introduction to these folks because they certainly are deserving of that. I'm going to pass that back to our panelists. Of that, and so you know a little bit about them. Again, Will was elected. This is again Council Vice President. Will was elected and sworn in as an at-large Montgomery County Council member in December 2018, and again in December of 2022, with the support of a diverse coalition from across the county. Will's platform was based on what he called the MoCo Promise, something he believes all Montgomery County residents are entitled to, and they are a safe, vibrant, and inclusive community with great schools and a strong economy. Understanding that not everyone shares in the promise of Montgomery County, Will is committed to fighting to keep the promise for all residents. Councilmember Will Jawando is an attorney by profession. He's an activist, community leader with a lifelong dedication to public service. His career has also been crafted by a unique combination of gifts, compassion, and integrity. Born in Silver Spring, Maryland, Will's biracial identity gave him an appreciation for the varied experiences life in America can bring. Raised in a low-income household, he was determined to secure a successful future for himself through the pathway of education, and also had a stint, I believe, in the President Obama's administration. Is that correct? Very good. Will Jawando, my friends, again, let's give him a round of applause. Next, we have my colleague, Gail Roper. She is our Chief Information Officer, Director of Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions. Gail M. Roper is an esteemed technology leader, renowned for her ability to bridge the gap between the private and public sectors, successfully implementing complex multi-million-dollar IT projects. With extensive experience in both realms, she excels in vendor negotiations and forging new partnerships to drive cutting-edge IT initiatives. Gail is a strategic thinker with a proven track record of developing IT plans that align seamlessly with her clients' business objectives. She has received multiple industry leadership awards and is a sought-after speaker on technology and broadband, as well as IT strategies, various forums and conferences across the world, and certainly here in the United States. Currently, she's serving, as I mentioned, the Chief Information Officer of Montgomery County and has been doing so for the last 4 years. Gail is responsible for the county's enterprise technology strategy and is actively promoting emerging technologies to enhance business resiliency, I should say. Her leadership has been instrumental in driving innovation and ensuring the county's technology advancements are aligned with its long-term goals. My colleague, Gail Roper, Director of, again, the Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solution. Gail. And next on our panel is Mitzi Herrera. She is Program Director of the Montgomery Connects, Digital Equity and XR Montgomery the actual Director of Montgomery Connects, and is involved also in the XR Montgomery Augmented and Virtual Programs in TEBS. She is responsible for designing, managing, and seeking grant funding to help all families and residents access the internet and technology to fully participate in our digital world. She is also working to deploy augmented reality experiences at African-American historical sites here in the county and to expand access to, again, AI virtual reality experiences for seniors. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel again. Ms. Mitzi Herrera. So the future, folks, the future. We'll start then again with our Council Vice President. If you had to describe the future in just a few words, how might you describe it? And what might be the basis of what you might, in fact, include in your answer? How would you describe it? And what might be the basis of how you would answer that question?
That's a very open question. I want to do my best. Happy Black History Month. I said it yesterday. We always are going to always celebrate Black History Month in Montgomery County. So that's the future. We're going to do that. I want to tie into one of our previous panelists. I am a big history buff. I was a sociology major, and a philosophy minor, but I really love history. And if I read books, I mostly read historical books. And the reason I do so is because it gives you context, which is helpful for in good times and bad times, in the valleys and in the mountaintops. And in perspective, I want to thank Council President Stewart, who's here. We did our council retreat recently. We went to the planetarium at Tacoma Park, at the Ike and Isaiah and Catherine Leggett Math and Science Building. And the planetarium is awesome. You should go there. But we took a break and we looked up, and they showed us some constellations, and they helped us find our way via the Little Dipper to the North Star. And I often do that at my house because my back is facing that way. And I think about a lot, like how many people have looked at that star. People like in great Marylanders like Harriet Tubman, who used that star to navigate people out of bondage. And so I say that to say that we are in a period not unlike other periods. And this is what the previous panelists had talked about, where if you look at post-Reconstruction, which was mentioned by both of our past panelists, where we had 2,000 federal, state, and local elected officials, and then 10 years after that Reconstruction period, we had almost zero. We are a country in a world of steps forward and steps back. And but the only way you move forward is by everyone continuing in the fight. And so our future is our past, in the sense that we are the stewards of this fight. We don't know how long it'll be. We don't know if we'll reap the benefits of it. You mentioned I worked for President Obama. I was able to be in a period of great progress. And I grew up in a period of progress. But I often think about people who never saw progress or saw very marginal progress. Slavery lasted for 12 and a half generations. Think about those folks in 1700 who were abolitionists, who never got close to freedom. What they did mattered. It led to previous generations. It led to 1865. And so I just put myself in a larger picture, and I put all of us in a larger picture of, even if I don't see it done, I have to learn from the past and make sure I fight just as hard so that future generations can see it done. And hopefully we'll see progress. We will. That's what I would say. Our future is, and it was longer than you probably wanted, but in our future is the continued struggle for justice, for equality, for forward movement, realizing that we do it not just for ourselves, we do it for everyone that comes after us.
Director Roper.
Sure. I would say this. I would say that I'm a technologist through and through. That causes me to always think about the future. What's next? I've got to keep up with what's happening as it relates to technology. But I would say that the current situation here in the United States is catastrophic. And the definition of catastrophic is involving or causing sudden great damage or suffering. And I think with that, we have to shift. I will always say that I believe that when things happen, action means everything. And with the topic today in regard to jobs, and I always say, yes, I'm the CIO from Montgomery County, and that is my Black job. And it is my responsibility to serve all Americans, all Montgomery County residents. That is part of what I have to do. So we have to have a dramatic shift in how we think. I think there will be excellent outcomes to what is happening now. I think that we'll begin to think different. We'll begin to pull ourselves up in a different way. We'll begin to look at our children differently and how we're educating them. Technology is a currency. The knowledge of technology is a currency for our young people, and we have to make sure that we expose them to that. I have been doing this for 35 years. I always carved out. I've worked for Google. I was the CIO for City of Austin, City of Raleigh, and I always carved out a portion of my job responsibilities to address what we needed to do with our youth. And I think that it is key for us to remember that technology is a currency, and that our students, young people are our future. We're not our future. Young people are our future. We support them, but I think ultimately what we have to do is shift our thinking.
Welcome, thank you. I do want to echo that I'm proud to be here during Black History Month, and I want to reiterate that Black history is American history. There is so much rich African American history here in Montgomery County. And I'm very excited that Director Roper helped us get on a path to doing more of new technology, augmented reality and virtual reality that is focused on finding new ways to rediscover our history. I would say that the answer to that is both, well, three things. It is technology is the future, but I would say that technology is also recognizing that those things that we used to talk about, critical thinking skills, are now more important than ever, because technology is a tool, and it's best used as a tool if we really understand how to leverage it. I would say that our history is both the youth and young workers, but also intergenerational, because there are a lot of things that older workers have to really help younger workers. And I'm proud that we helped work on the Summer Rise program. The things that we have really are finding ways to help young workers become more confident in the workplace, finding more ways to help young workers help to navigate interpersonal communication, because that's one, I think, downside of current technology, is that it has made it, it's less of a skill that you come into the place of understanding how to talk with other people, communicate with other people, even though you have amazing tools to do that. And then lastly, I'll say is that I think that what it really is that there is an obligation that all of us currently have to help make all young workers the best that they can be. And that's partly why we do want to focus in Black history and focus on the racial equity and social justice initiatives, because the future for us is the larger percentage of everyone who hasn't had it as easy getting there, and that investment. Last thing I'll say is that in this climate, I think focusing on the reason we do these things is because the outcomes matter, and that those investments pay off for us. And the reason we do it is because it's cost effective to do it. And I think that is something that we really need to be focused on. It's not because it's just a nice thing to do or the right thing to do or it feels good to do it. It's because ultimately I have a self-interest in the success of the people who come after me.
Director, why have we not been able to make the case that, let me say it differently, many of us fear technology because, again, we see this science fiction kind of thing in our minds, right, about takeover, needing less of us from a human perspective to engage in the process. Help us understand a little bit better that whole process, and is what I'm saying true at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of that is understanding that there is a dark side of everything. There is a dark side of entertainment. There is a dark side of just about everything we embark on. And I think there is a definite need for people to understand that and begin to work in a fashion and engage in technology cautiously. Mitzi's programs do a lot of that work with elders, helping them to understand, the things that they should do to try and protect themselves against phishing and scamming and those kinds of things, and as it relates to technology. But again, I think there is so much good there that if you understand those things, if you educate yourself, AARP has programs to help people understand how to use technology in a safe fashion. And I would say that there's more good than there is bad that will come from your lives using technology if you understand how to use it safely. But the fear should be there. Absolutely.
we're talking about labor and the issue of African Americans. To our Council Vice President, you were involved, and Missy just made some action note of it, the RISE program. Again, trying to have workers be engaged in processes and so forth and so on. Talk a little bit about that, and how are we seeing, again, the emergence of new workers going into so many different areas that can, in fact, be opportunities for all workers, but particularly Black workers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the, you get questions sometimes, what are you most proud of? If I had to, I'd say summarize, that would be my knee-jerk reaction, which is now given thousands of students opportunities to explore what they're interested in county government and private sector through work-based learning opportunities. It's not a new idea, the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program, which was named after him a few years ago. When I was designing this program, I went and spoke to them about how they do theirs, and then I met with other people, and we created our own version of it. We have 50,000 high school students. Most of them leave without any career-based work learning opportunities. We're trying to change that so they can think about how they want to contribute in the world, and RISE is a part of that, along with internships and other programs. I want to piggyback on something you said, because I started with a real hopeful message, and I'm going to answer your question. We have to understand history to know where we're going. The future is always in flux, right? And we're always in jeopardy, right? Institutions crumble, empires fall, all that happens, and people are involved in that. I think we're at a point with technology and with labor where they have never been in more tension. And they've always been in tension, the Industrial Revolution, all that. There's always been tension between industrial and technological progress and labor. But now it's at the point, it's happening so rapidly that job classifications are leaving. We have to question the value and the dignity of work, and whether we actually believe in the dignity of work, that everyone should be able to work and contribute to society and then sustain themselves and their families as a result. You have the pressures of rapid profit and greed that have led to rapid income inequality. You have technological advancement. You have now, of course, AI. My wife works at the intersection of how do we create a global AI center, an ethics base and regulatory framework for AI. And then even if America does it and Europe does it, what if the rest of the world doesn't do it, right? China's not doing it. So these are big questions that are impacting these young people that we're talking about, their ability to get into the workforce and what those jobs will be. And it makes it harder for us to project what those jobs will be. And so I think we have to do both things. We have to commit to the dignity of work and say that every human being should have a baseline floor of sustainability, healthcare, access to food, housing, and some income. And we have to create a floor for that. And then we also have to train and use technology for the jobs of the future and see where we fit in. And I think those are hard tensions, but things like Summer Rise, things like after school and out of time programming, things like dual enrollment with Montgomery College, and all the things we're trying to do, MCPS, are all a part of making sure our young people, the future generations, can connect to that system. But it is in flux. It's in big flux. And labor is going to play a huge role, given back to this theme, because labor has always demanded, in the midst of technological innovation, people are the people, it's people power. And how do we respect that dignity of work?
Let's see, we've got just a few minutes here left, but you have worked with young people and been involved with that process, also RISE as well. Do young people see that they've got a place in all of this? And particularly Black workers, Black students, do they have a place in the work world? Do they think they got a place in the work world? I'm asking all of you this quick. We'll start with Missy.
So I think we're getting a signal here that we need a quick wrap up soon. I will say an affirmative yes. I think that there are many, I want to just go one quick push. The Summer Rise program, I believe the applications are due in March for departments to host those students. We're happy to provide maybe a workshop of like how you can do it and how you can expand it. I think you'd be amazed at the young people who really are confident, who are out there. And there is also a lot of young people that when someone paid a little bit of attention and they got exposure to something new, suddenly realized that they had so many more different opportunities that they could take advantage of. And it behooves all of us to basically help others by helping them to build that confidence, hosting the Summer Rise program, and giving them the opportunity to learn the workforce. I'm going to give Gail a couple minutes.
I just wanted to say that we are embarking on a rollout of AI for Montgomery County, and we've engaged Montgomery College and the University of Maryland. So those students are now studying and researching how we can use AI in our various departments, how we use it in transportation, how we use it in sustainability. So we've created this forum where they're actually working with us and doing that research. So always find a way to reach out, get the students involved, and then they begin to understand how they can be involved.
Last point.
I would agree. Thank you for the Summarize plug. Sign up. That's all. We always have more students apply than there's spots. And yeah, there is a role. There's so many young entrepreneurs that are digital natives that know how to interact and create business and with technology. So for Black students, if you watch the Grammys, if you watch anything that generates revenue for this country, Black people are at the center of it. There was a young lady, I'll end with her. I saw her this morning. She won the Best Rap Artist, Doechii. And if you haven't heard of her, she's awesome. 2 years ago, she posted a video that she had just lost her job. And she was like, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna go see if someone has an internship at a studio or record. And here in 2 years, this young Black girl is the best rap artist. There's possibility out there if you apply yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, give our panel a round of applause, please. Our Council Vice President, Will Jawando, again, our Director of TIBS, Gail Roper, and also one of our colleagues, Mitzi Herrera, who's working with the digital program as well. Give them again a round of applause. Thank you so much, folks. We'll transition off with our panel and get into one more real critical area. I know our time is moving on very fast, but this is a very important area. We want to make sure that we give, again, its due notice in its due time frame, and that is to recognize some of our own employees who have done extraordinary things, even though they think they are in ordinary positions and responsibilities. And to recognize those persons, we'll bring up then my colleague, Lentisa Colvin, who will come up and talk about this very special award. Again, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Come on up, Lentisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Black History Month Planning Committee, I will once again like to thank you guys for attending this wonderful tradition. It's my pleasure to share the names of two recipients of this year's Montgomery County Service Award, the Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things Award. This year, this award is presented to employees in our workforce who have done extraordinary things. The first recipient is Dr. Keisha Davis, and the second one is Officer Brandon McLeod. Dr. Keisha Davis is a Montgomery County native who works as the Chief Health Officer. She demonstrates dedication and professionalism, which makes her an excellent candidate for this recognition. Her efforts to build partnerships, advocate for vulnerable populations, and address complex public health challenges, and they have made a meaningful difference in Montgomery County. Dr. Davis has positively impacted the health and well-being of residents while fostering partnerships across sectors. Her contributions at both the county and state levels mirror her commitment to advancing public health, and this award would honor her significant efforts to benefit not only her profession, but the department and the community. Officer Brandon McLeod serves as the Montgomery County Police 3rd District Community Services Officer. While Officer McLeod doesn't brag about his accomplishments, they're everywhere. He works quietly for the Lattice to Santa event, which helps vulnerable kids experience a better Christmas. From mentoring young men through high school to playing in the highly popular 3-on-3 basketball tournament and helping students succeed and volunteering at his local events within the community that he lives. Officer McLeod is dedicated. He quietly weaves threads of generosity into the fabric of his work and the community that he serves. His contagious smile and energy have earned him the trust of his community and his peers. Officer McLeod doesn't chase fleeting moments of fame. Instead, he creates lasting moments and impacts that ripple through the lives of those he touches. That's an effortless strength in his reliability, and perhaps that's what makes him extraordinary.
Thank you, Lanthisa. We will be looking forward to presenting those awards at a later date with the county executive, and look forward for those persons to be present and to be recognized directly by him. My friends, we've come to the end of our program. We hope that you have enjoyed it. I want to thank all of those who have participated. We want to thank again our planning committee and all of you. Brother Anthony Skinner, thank you for your leadership. We also want to give due credit to our technical support folks. Thank you for walking through us with us. I know we've had some challenges today, but you minute on through it, and that's a good thing. That's how we do it here in Montgomery County. We don't let anything stop us. We work through it. And so as we close out, I hope I've thanked everybody who's been engaged in the process. I also, Derek Kenny, just stand up, please. Derek Kenny. And all of his folks who are here, and our folks from CMC, is that correct? CMC is here in the house? I always get it wrong. It's actually Montgomery Community Media. I got that right. Okay, they're here as well. Thank you so much, folks, for being here. I really appreciate what you do. And as we close out, I would just offer this one thought. My grandmother was a quilter. She made quilts. And for those of you who may not know what that is, that's bed covering that's made, used to be made by hand. Grandmother would collect pieces of cloth in all kinds of shapes and sizes over the course of a year. She might go to a store, a variety store, and see a piece of cloth that particularly interested her. She wouldn't buy the whole boat, as it were, or a large amount. She would just get this little piece of it. And what she would do is, upon collecting all these bits of cloth, and by the way, they were all in different kinds of shapes. They were squares, they were rectangles, they were triangles, they were circles, they were all kinds of shapes and sizes in the box that she kept them in. So it came time then to actually do the quilting, making the quilt. She would fashion all of them in a design first to make real sure that they would fit. And every one of those pieces of cloth found their way into the right position. And when she was searching for a piece that was missing, it really made her very upset, because that would mean then that the quilt could not be completed. And so she searched, and sometimes had to end up finding a new piece of cloth. But upon finding that piece of cloth, she could lay it in place. And now the quilt was complete. My friends, that's what Black History Month is all about. We're not trying to be the whole quilt. We just want to be a piece of it. Just like you, who may be some other race, some other culture, some other background. You have a place in this quilt called humanity. And when we work hard to make real sure that whatever your piece may look like, it has a place in the quilt of this community. That's Black History Month. And so to say to anybody out here that somehow or another I don't fit, this is not my observance, I don't need to belong here, have a point and part in all of this, absolutely. Because remember, Grandma said, I can't complete this quilt because I'm missing an important part. And so to all of you here who are listening to us and those here in the audience this afternoon, thank you. But remember, we've got to work hard at it because it's not easy. We got to work hard at somehow or another, finding out a place for everyone to fit. It is heavy lifting. But we believe as a committee that we're up to the task. Happy, happy, happy Black History Month. Thank you all for being here.